Hey y'all, today we're going to do a video on the basic operation of a Motorguide XI3 trolling motor, which you see here, the bow mount trolling motor up front, using just the basic non-GPS fundamentals with the basic fob, and how it will power a Hobie Outback 2019 kayak. Behind me in the toolbox are 3 batteries. 2 of the batteries, connected in parallel, are powering the motor. The other battery is powering the Lowrance. Right now we're doing about 4 miles per hour. If we wanted to stop the motor, we just hit the propeller off and the motor stops. And before I put propeller on, it's a good idea to make sure you're down to a low power setting, and then push it again. We've got power on. Right now I have the motor straight and I'm steering with the rudder on the Hobie. If I hold the plus button down and wait till it beeps, we'll be going full power on the motor. So you can control the kayak with the motor by steering the motor, or you can line the motor up to where the kayak will track straight and then steer it with the rudder of the kayak. If I'm going longer distances, this is the way I prefer to control it. Just use it as a straight power motor and steer with my rudder. It's the easiest, simplest way to do it. And you can see the Hobie turns pretty much on a dime. We did a 360 there. Now we'll go the opposite direction with the rudder. It may take it a moment to start turning. Have to get some forward motion on the kayak before it does. Notice the kayak leans a little in this hard turn, but not a lot. Then back to straight. I prefer to always keep the rudder down when I'm using the motor. I use it if I'm steering with the motor. I use it as kind of a stabilizer, like a keel. So if I wanted to steer with the motor, I'd push the left arrow. Now the motor's steering me left, and now the motor's steering me right. You see that I have an A-trail stand-up bar installed. If I'm steering with the motor, steering the motor using the fob, I generally prefer to be sitting down, because if you do something like go to full power, let it get up to speed here, and you do something like this, it can turn the kayak rather abruptly. You weren't expecting it to do that. So at first, when you're using the trolling motor, it's best to be sitting down. See if we can't build up a little speed here. Normally we get better than 4 miles an hour with the motor wide open, but that is affected by if you're pushing a wind or if you're going against a current. This will pull about 30 to 35 amps depending upon whether your motor is a little fouled with seaweed, how much weight the kayak weighs, and how hard the motor has to pull to get to that speed. But generally I figure about, if I'm wide open, about 32, 33 amps. If I reduce it from wide open, let's say we take it down 5 clicks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 15 out of 20 clicks, that's 75% power. And see, we're doing about 3.4, 3.5 miles an hour. That's down to 25 to 28 amps. So normally this is what I run it at, because I'll have a much longer range if I don't burn quite as heavy amps. And the extra half a mile an hour to 0.7 of a mile an hour that you get out of it at wide open throttle goes through your batteries rather quickly, even though I've got 100 amps back there, 100 amp hours. Also, because those are 50 amp hour batteries, their BMSs, the computer board inside that regulates them, is rated for 50 amps. So the closer you get to 50 amps, the more heat you put in that computer board, and that could wear out your battery a little prematurely. If we were to go back to one more click, should be 14. Now we're burning 18 to 20 amps, and we're still doing between 3, some days you'll see 3.5 miles an hour. If I didn't have the drive in, I might be getting a 0.3 of a mile an hour faster. So some of what I'm seeing may be the result of the fins being down. I have just pushed one pedal full forward and fared them with the hull, and notice we're going faster. So quite often when I motor the kayak, I just stow the fins in the back and run off the trolling motor rather than have the fins in the drive slot. I'll usually put the cassette that blocks the hole so it doesn't pump a bunch of water through, and then go with the motor only. And I'm carrying the fins back in the aft tank well, just as a safety thing. If the motor quits, then I can fall back on just being a pedal drive Hobie kayak. More traffic on the ICW. We'll look for traffic. Now, I'm at 70% power, conserving battery life. What if I pedal the kayak? So one way of using this is to use the pedals in conjunction with the motor. So right now you see we're at wide open throttle. Today we're getting about 4 to 4.1 miles per hour. If we want to add to that, we can pedal with the fins. pulling about 30 to 35 amps when we do this. So if I take my fob and go down 4 clicks, 1, 2, 3, 4. At 16 clicks, we're about 80% power. And we're 28 to 30 amps on our amp draw. Our batteries are now going to last a lot longer because it's usually going to be less than 28 amps. And we're doing 3.7 miles per hour. And if we help it by pedaling it, so like a lot of bikes, electric bikes are kind of battery assist. The cyclist pedals and the electric motor helps you get up hills when you got a lot of resistance and helps you go a little faster than you'd normally go just on your own. So you can use a trolling motor in the Hobie like that too. Okay. So we go back one more click. 15 clicks out of 20 is 75% power, 3/4 of the capability of the motor. We lost about 2/10 to 3/10 of a mile an hour. It looks like 2/10 here. And if we're going to help it by pedaling, we can do a rather comfortable cruising pedal. And now instead of cruising at 3, maybe 3.5 miles an hour, and it was 2.5 to 3.5 depending on who's pedaling the Hobie, we're now pedaling at a pace that we can sustain. We're doing 4.3 miles per hour, and now our amp rating is down around 25, sometimes only 22. And with 100 amp hours, we easily have 4 hours of range. It's not a straight mathematical thing. I'm still working on doing the workups to understand just exactly what my performance values are on this kayak so I can better plan using the motor to take it on longer range fishing trips. If we subtract one more click, or 70% power, now we're going about the speed that a average person's going to pedal a Hobie over a long sustained distance, as opposed to, you know, anybody can get 5 miles an hour when they sprint and really work on the pedals, but you can't sustain that for forever. So you're usually going more in this speed if you're a reasonable pedaler on a Hobie. And using the electric assist, so to speak, we're pedaling the Hobie with the trolling motor helping us, and we're getting up around 4 miles an hour. When we're down in this power range, if we do an abrupt turn, it's not as exciting. Basically, I'm clearing the area for traffic. And if we center the rudder, we can steer it using the fob, left to go left, right to go right. Ooh, a little quick there. This is one of those things that if you're someone who's used to using a bow mount trolling motor on your bass boat or your bay boat or what have you, this comes pretty natural to you. If you're new to trolling motors and just doing it with your kayak, you want to be sitting down and run at the lower power settings and just go out and turn it around, steer it, get used to how it handles. That gives you a little bit of an idea of the stability of the boat with the trolling motor engaged. I'm going to go back to full power. And we're going to demonstrate just making a really hard left turn. Straight, lift it. Back straight, kayak get back up to speed. Okay. That previous was a hard left turn. Let's make a hard right turn. If I'm sitting down, it's not that exciting. Hobie's pretty capable of handling the power of this trolling motor. Now, let's say I wanted to go backwards. And back to forward. This particular one is a 52-pound thrust Bass Pro Shop special. I bought it for two reasons. One, it was cheap, and I had a credit card of theirs that I had about $100 and some of store credits, which made it even cheaper. And the other is during COVID, and there weren't a lot of trolling motors available at the time because, as we all know, they had supply chain issues on everything. So when you look at the speeds that I'm getting right now and I'm showing you, bear in mind that this isn't quite the same motor as the 55-pound thrust motor that the kayak motor is. So that motor may give you 2 or 3 tenths of a mile an hour more speed in an Outback than I'm getting with mine right now. The main reason you want a 36-inch shaft length like the Motorguide kayak model has, or like people cut them down to that were doing that before Motorguide came out with the 36-inch shaft, is particularly on the Hobie, if I retract this motor fully, it's going to be in the way of my pedals. People have done this differently on how they deal with deploying and retracting a trolling motor from a kayak. I use one paracord on a Panoptix mount that's mounted loosely to pull it up, and the other paracord coming down low here that pulls the retraction plate on the trolling motor. So to demonstrate that, I need to turn the motor off. Turn the propeller off. And you can see if I pulled it all the way back into the latch, it'd be in the way of pedals. So my choice is I've just got a little ball on here on a H-rail fitting, and now I've stowed the motor. Now I go back to being a pedal drive kayak. That sandbar is going to be too shallow to get the kayak across to the other side. Yeah, we wouldn't have made it with the trolling motor. We'll go to a short flutter kick, get ourselves over this sandbar, hopefully. Maybe not. We're getting pretty shallow here. We might be paddling time. This is a good example of how Hobie Mirage drives can deal with environments where you have to go through shallows to get to the next place you want to fish or want to go to. Okay, water's getting darker. Back in deeper water. Now I'm over here. I can let the motor back down. Whenever I put the motor down, I like to take and steer it. There, you hear it go. Boom. That engaged the motor in the steering collar. Now I can turn the prop on. There'd be a little post out here. Now I'm going to possibly run aground. I'm going to run that risk right at the moment. If I'm concerned that might happen, I'm just going to run a slower speed so it isn't a really catastrophic event. See if I can navigate through here. The motor takes about the same depth, maybe a little less than a full stroke with the Mirage Drive fins. Depends on where you set it. I try to set it to where it's just a little shallower depth than the Mirage Drive fins. Looking here at my thing, it's totally by eye, because the depth on the depth sounder is obviously where you were. Oh, there's that stake I'm looking for. There's a little stake out here. Someone put it out there to mark the shoal, and if I go just the other side of it, excuse me, I may be in deep enough water. Split my pedals so that if I do run into the ground, 10 bottom, it's just going to be a thunk with a trolling motor, not pranging the fins on my Mirage Drive. It's a little shallow. All right, I think we made it.